Welcome back to the 14th Leadership Skills Development Summit 2021. As mentioned earlier, please don't forget to visit our exhibition, virtual exhibition that is, and also to hashtag Skills Summit 2021. I hope you have your questions. We are more than ready to receive them. And I hope so far you have enjoyed and grown and especially learned, particularly from our previous speakers. Without further ado, we are now embarking on our panel discussions for the day. And the first one, we will be discussing infrastructure delivery, restoring the skills pipeline in partnership with the Human Resource Development Council. And leading the panel this morning is Mrs. Brenda Ntombela, who is the head of Secretariat for Human Resource Development Council. Welcome, Mrs. Ntombela, and thank you very much for joining us. And Brenda will then be introducing our panelists who will be engaging with us this morning. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning to everybody, with special greetings to our Deputy Minister. I'm not sure whether he's still around, but I'm just saying good morning to him. All protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our session that is going to be taking place now. As has mentioned, my name is Brenda, and then I'm going to be running this particular session. Welcome to this second session. The panel discussion, it is under infrastructure delivery, restoring the skills pipeline in partnership with the Human Resource Development Council. At this moment, I would like to, and I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves. Over to you, panel members.
Hi, good morning. It seems to be mine's the only one that's not muted at the moment. My name is Frans Toua. I'm from a private FET college. Check out my office is in Johannesburg, but we also have offices throughout the country and we operate nationally. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Frans.
Okay, Vishaal, I'll jump in. Morning, everybody. My name is CEO of an industry association known as Consulting Engineers South Africa, also more commonly known as CESA. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks, Chris. Thank you for inviting me to this conference as well. Great to meet you, Frans, and Brenda as well. I'm Vishaal Lutchman. I'm Institution of Civil Engineering. And we are based nationally as well, and we look after the interests and needs and the development of our civil engineers in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishaal. We were also expecting a colleague from TITA. Unfortunately, there is no one at the moment. So we will continue with our program. We have a very wide topic that is supposed to be handled by our experts this morning. When we look at infrastructure, infrastructure is divided into a number of areas. We will be handling issues related to ICTs, roads and transport, built environment, electricity, etc., etc. Again, our session is going to be looking at issues that are related to the pipeline. When you look at the pipeline, we are looking at from the foundation stage up to the world of work. We'll be touching on a number of issues that have been touched upon by some of the previous speakers. For example, this is looking at whatever that is supposed to be done from cradle to grave. Absorption of the graduates, how is it done within our country, and how are we going to reposition ourselves when it comes to that? What is the role of professional councils, in relation to what we are going to be handling as part of our heading? Before I allow the panel to start with their presentations or discussions, I would like to share just a slide on our HRD strategy towards 2030, that is talking about skills development and the skills for the economy, for the transformed economy. I'm not sure whether, Bev, we have somebody behind who's going to be beaming the slide that I wanted to talk to. If not, I will just mention the objectives that are under the Human Resource Development Strategy towards 2030, that is looking at the skills for the transformed society. And I hope and wish that all of those issues that we're going to handle here will be covered somewhat, not necessarily as they are within our strategy. One strategic objective about the skills for the transformed society and the economy, it is to ensure that the demand, it is documented and communicated effectively to enable improved supply and demand. And then the next objective is to put in place a skills system that is effective in brokering partnerships to address priority skills needs in the economy. The third one is about improving skills profile, especially of the SMMEs, rural and township enterprises, women, the people with disabilities, and the needs. And the last one, last objective under the skills, it is to improve the skills profile of the employed workforce to enable greater levels of productivity and adaptability to the changing needs of the labor market. Those are the 4 objectives that are there within our HRD strategy. Well, with those words and the introduction, introducing our strategy as the HRDC, I would like to hand over to we will start according to the program that we have and request Chris to start with his presentation. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, I presume everybody can see that. I'm not going to do a death by PowerPoint, but I think it's important that I have the opportunity to share with you graphically rather than just as a narrative. To illustrate, important is the topic, infrastructure delivery, restoring the skills pipeline in partnership with the human resource development. So it's very important, ladies and gentlemen, that we've got to, we need to look at the situation systemically, holistically, and with a long-term approach. I think we generally tend to have this assumption that you can just touch here and you can touch there and there's a magic wand and it's all going to, just materialize. But the reality is, and if we talk restoring, it also means sowing new seeds. So essentially, we need to plant new seeds while the current crop grows, and we almost protect it against the insects. If I can use that analogy, all the ills of that hamper their future and further progress. So it's a continuous process. But here's a challenge I'd like to show you, and these are the DBE diagnostic stats. Now, if we don't interrogate these, then we pretty much fall into the definition of insanity. If you look at these numbers, and I must say that this report I got from the DBE, whoever did it made an unfortunate error. This number over here, if you can see my cursor, is actually 5,001, not 45. So it illustrates the issues around maths performance. But if we look at the last 9 years and we look at the numbers, we look at the percentage of pupils that achieved more than, let's say, from 60 to 100%, although I would quite honestly point, realistically, not mine, but those of many of the tertiary institutions have found that you'd need to be above the 60, 69. You'd need to be in the 70% upwards if you're going to survive a tertiary education, maths intense environment. So realistically, from our students, 500,000 that on average over the last nine years in grade 12, we have about 16,000 who would actually be available and have been on average, let's say, over the last 9 years. So 16,000 young people, young learners, then have to choose between your finances, your maths-based types of careers and engineering, and you split that 3 ways. You may be lucky if you get 5,000 going into engineering, number one. But to the point I'm trying to illustrate is, if we've been doing something to improve the situation, then clearly and unfortunately, it's not making any difference. What are we doing? And rethink it, because the numbers are not changing significantly enough. So moving on, and this is important. So where's the starting point? And I'm going to focus on, firstly, an engineering practitioner's life cycle. Very often, and I'm happy to see it in the human resource development strategy, is a strong focus on early childhood development, because it is indeed true. Play is what starts young children off in coping and learning, the various skills that they're going to be require into the future. And there's a strong focus to strengthen that. But I think we may or may not be aware of, as we speak, there's a children's amendment bill out. This bill, unfortunately, according to many people involved in that space, people contend that it's just putting more and more hurdles and making the challenge for having more early childhood development institute. And the bureaucracy, unfortunately, hurts mostly the poor, because for approval becomes so onerous that people eventually give up. Nobody's arguing against quality, but there is that challenge, and that has efforts towards early childhood development. So we need to be able to look at what is the HRD looking at, and the department that's driving the Children's Amendment Bill need to talk to each other, because there may be unintended focuses of the bill amendment. But let's move further on into their career. After the early childhood and this whole schooling process, where you need, competent teachers who actually attend school more frequently than the pupils, that are adept at probably teaching, have a passion for it. We are talking about a 15-year process here for any young child starting at the age of 3. And then the life to another 4-year engineering education program. If you do well, it may end up being 5. Then you've got to go on and you require another 3 years. Now, this is because engineering and most of your practical built environment types of careers are based on applied sciences. So you learn all of you gain the knowledge, but you've got to go put it into practice and make things work using your theory. So that will require another 3 to 4 years. Then you're registered as a professional. All too often you hear people talking about how can we fast track people in this space here. Firstly, you may be limited by numbers, but you also may be limited by the fact that there are in industry at the moment a lull in work projects. companies only at 80% utilization levels. But let me not dwell on that. Let's move on into your career as an engineering practitioner. Now, you have a choice. You may become an expert, technical expert, or you may end up being a manager in an enterprise that depends on your engineering knowledge and skills, which is great. Problem is, is in many of our environments, we tend not to recognize the technical expert and remunerate them adequately. So everybody wants to go and become the manager. And so we lose that technical depth because of the remuneration aspects. And then, lastly, I also want to show you that very often our practitioners retire, but they never fully retire. They remain active, even I think up to the age of 80. So long beyond the retirement age of 60 or 65, many practitioners still remain active. Now, very important in this family is we have to look at the full ambit. We can't only look at the engineer and the engineering technologists, the engineering professionals who've gone and pursued tertiary education. And my colleague Frans will talk more about them, but our artisans that grow into supervisor inspectors, that even for the built environment could be draftsmen, architectural or engineering. So we need to look at these all in balance. It doesn't help for everybody to be pursuing one channel, and we find we are constrained because there is no engineer that knows how to lay bricks sufficient to build a house or do the wiring for the electrician or the plumbing. So we need to think about this issue very broadly. And the point I'd like to leave you here with is, though we are trying to strengthen the TVET colleges, it's one of the strategies in the HRD plan. There are some fault lines worth reconsidering, Brenda, in the HRD strategy. For example, your feedstock for lecturers should actually come from artisan supervisors, and then maybe, if some of them still exist, master craftsmen, not masters or PhDs. I, with all the respect in the world, I do not believe they have sufficient skills and knowledge to be able to relay what is required for future artisans to ply their craft. They may know a lot more, but at too different and higher level for that. So we need to rethink that if we're going to get it right. I'm time constrained, so I'm not going to dwell on this, but there are gems. We've got a wonder how some schools like Mbilwi and in Dendron, the level of grade 12s that make it into engineering programs. And if we look at our NDP, we may need to move the target. We've run out of time. There's just no way that we're going to achieve 50% in maths and science in 80% of our schools in the next 9 years. Not if those numbers have flatlined over the last 9 years, unless there's some miracle and likewise, again, 450,000 is almost the average of the, so I think we need to do more work there. And yeah, let me move on to my closing remarks here so I can give my colleagues a chance. We have a huge challenge. It's going to take a strong partnership between public and private sector. There are many issues that distract us. I'm going to be blunt. There's a lot of institutional racism in our learning institutions, in schools that we're dealing with, inadequate buildings, absence of performance management of errant teachers, and. We have to get these distractions out of the way so we can focus on the greater challenge. And that is the challenge that we need to take the development of our society that's sufficiently educated and may indeed realize the wisdom of the words of Madiba. And 3 of his many quotes very quickly. We all know the top one: education is the most powerful weapon. Yes. The power of education extends beyond the development of skills. We need economic success, and it can contribute to nation building engine of personal development through education, that the daughter of a peasant becomes a doctor, son of a mine worker becomes head of that mine, child of a farm worker becomes president of a great nation. And it is what we make of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. So that's my, hopefully a platform that I've laid for the rest of my colleagues and for the remainder of the discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Chris. I would like to follow a process of requesting all the presenters to continue to present, and then I'll summarize at the end. So for now, I'm going to request the next speaker. Thank you.
Frans, can I proceed? Let me be the next speaker. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay.
I don't have a present conversation, but let me share some thoughts. And thanks, Chris. You did set a good platform to start off with. Chairperson, I'd like to use your analogy of the pipeline, and maybe we'll start with that. You know, the pipeline is what in civil engineering what we would call our network infrastructure. And it's a good analogy for the simple reason that it is able to meet demands through the provision of supply. Typically, that's how our network infrastructure works. So as we would talk about supply, and Chris did allude to some of those issues regarding STEM and mathematics, that feeds into the education discussion and perhaps the improvement that we would need to make in that. Now, along the way, using that pipeline analogy going forward, we have influences, we have academia that plays a role, we have one's family, civil society, other educators, and technology as well. That tends to be rolled up into the experience of one coming through school to the tertiary institutions and then into a workplace or any entrepreneurial type of initiative. Now, along that way, there's development that happens. And in order for the supply to work and be part of the system of skills development in the country, there has to also be a place that it is demanded. Now, over time, in my opinion, the demand for such skills has waned in a sense that we've not had the projects that we would have liked to see happen. And I'm talking about probably in the last 10 or so years, where we focused, I would say, alternatively and not too much on infrastructure development. So if the demand for such skills is not physically there by way of projects for engineers and technical and all of the stakeholders involved in the provision of infrastructure, then we have a backlog and we have a congestion that's going to happen in the system. And I sense that's the case right now. We have engineers coming out of if I go back to the pipeline again, we have engineers coming ready for the workplace and to enter the workplace, but they don't have work they don't have employment opportunities. So that is one of the problems that I think we need to work on. And we did speak about relationships and the level of fragmentation in our industry. We all seem to dig our heels into various types of beliefs, I would say, in terms of how we would solve this problem. And the lack of convergence on that is perhaps exacerbating or prolonging the issue with regard to meaningful deployment of skills that are currently available. So in my mind, there's currently a lack or an imbalance in the skills that are available. On one front, we have construction firms and perhaps engineering firms that are having to retrench individuals that are skilled because of the lack of projects. And on the other side, we have perhaps in the public sector a lack of skills for various other reasons. And there's a mismatch currently on the go. And we would like to see from an institution's point of view, a bit of leveling happening such that skills can be deployed into the right places to help capacitate generally the industry of infrastructure. Now, when it comes to the beliefs that I mentioned about, that kind of touches on why we need leaders. And leaders and leadership is a really large topic, and it for many days, to be honest with you. But I think what's more important in terms of leadership is effective leadership at the time that it is demanded. Now, in this time, we think, or I would say, I think, what's important is the ability to bring stakeholders together, to believe that we need to fix the problems. Unemployment, for example, is still very stubbornly attached to the conversation about the economy of South Africa. So when we talk about the economy, unemployment is a very important KPI to measure our socioeconomic progress. And that is stubbornly high for many years coming. And we have not seemed to have made meaningful impact or progress towards that. So as much as we talk about education, which is really important, and that sort of addresses the SDG goal number 4, which is access to quality education, it transforms in that pipeline to start attending to the SDG number 9, which is infrastructure industrialization linked to our economic reconstruction and recovery plan. So I think that's where the nuance happens and the transformation happens for our technical individuals looking to provide infrastructure. How do you educate yourself meaningfully and then transform to become actively involved in the economy? And that opportunity is not clear anymore. So I think from my perspective, that idea of balance that I spoke about in terms of the skills distribution across the industry, that needs to happen. But more importantly, 3 focus areas as it applies to leadership could assist. One is strategy, and that seems to be used very loosely. Not many people maybe appreciate how important it is to have a strategy that we stick to across various eras that is agreed by ourselves, as comes into that discussion in terms of how we do our agreements along the lines of developing this economy. And the second one is leadership itself. In other words, who is the leader? What is he about? What are the defining beliefs of that leader? And are those beliefs relevant to solving problems that we have? We may have leaders excellently, with excellent qualifications, really well equipped for solving another problem, but maybe not to solve the problem we have today, for example. So it's important to have the right forms of leaders or the right types of leaders, and there's processes to follow in how do we achieve that. Then the third one is technical excellence. And technical excellence requires one to appreciate the content that they have received at the academic institutions, to appreciate what they can do with such content, and to grow that content knowledge along their life's journey. So those 3, should we focus on intimately together with the enablers of social compacting and bringing about projects and the like, I think we have a chance to unlock and make this system, coming back to your pipe analogy, work and flow again, because flow is where the important successes can be managed. And right now it seems to be like the flow is restricted. The last one is trust. And trust breeds a lot of relevance when it comes to leadership. I believe there's currently a trust deficit, if I use a broad sweeping statement, that we tend to perhaps be suspicious of other stakeholders and what their agendas are. And are they working towards a common good? And can we ever work towards a common good? And I think that's an important factor. And building trust starts with a conversation in my mind. And I think these are good platforms to do that. And I think that's where we need to move forward from in terms of helping ourselves solve this problem. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Vishaal. As stated before, we would like to have all the discussants or the panelists to present their discussions or to make their own presentations. So I'll hand over to Frans, then I will summarize at the end. Thanks. Over to you, Frans.
Thanks, Brenda. I just want to, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can. Thanks. You can go ahead.
All right, okay. Right, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, just very quickly, when we got the topic to talk today or be part of the panel, I looked at the topics is restoring a skills pipeline, and I thought to myself, what are we looking at? I'm looking at quantity, I'm looking at quality, or we're looking at all three categories. And I think, from my perspective, I think we're looking at all three different categories. Just a bit of background on who we are. So the comments I'm going to make are that follows shortly with other slides. Just to give some background who we are. And so as you can see, we're a private FED college, primarily focusing in the building and civil construction industry since 2000. And our base that we train is normally artisans, your supervisors or foremen, construction managers, small contract developers. The paths that we follow are CETA QSTO registered learnerships and apprenticeships. We do CETA QSTO registered skills programs and short technical skills courses, as we call portable skills. Our rotation is with while we register with the Department of Higher Education, the private FED college. We're accredited with the construction CETA, and also I think if we look at, I'm going to look at more the artisan level, whereas Chris and Yvonne spoke about the more on the engineering degrees and higher up. I think if we look at pointers to restore are based on, say, 20 years in the industry. I think what we're finding more and more these days are things such as we're getting we need fewer crisis competency training and more proactive long-term planned formal skills programs and apprenticeships. It seems to be something that's emerging very strongly these days. Companies need competent people to work on specific projects, and I'm particularly talking about construction companies. And then the individuals do have a fair amount of experience, but they were not necessarily trained. And then in order to be allowed onto a construction site, somebody is competent. And then we are faced with crisis competency training or certification. I think what we've seen over the last couple of years, and I think it's since 2010 when we had the World Cup, that with the decline in construction activity, fewer and fewer apprenticeships were signed on by construction companies. And I think we need more contractors that are required to willingly come forward to sign on apprenticeships and take ownership of these apprentices. One thing that we've been asked a question is that there are bursaries and other funding models for higher education development for university students, degrees and so forth, that will cover things like the full training, and tertiary model does not exist for your artisans. And I think in looking forward and the skills pipeline going forward, I think maybe we need to look at include funding models that include for accommodation for candidates that want to go the apprenticeship route as well. I think it's very important that we ensure that the training durations and quality are in line with QSTO and SACA policies and guidelines. I think once again, talking about the crisis competency, we have come across that training durations are becoming less and less and shorter, which does not do justice to the quality of the learners leaving the system and entering the marketplace. And I think another comment from my side is that apprentices require better or intense on-site coaching and mentoring from the contractor and the qualified staff. That's something that is where we stand not really happening adequately enough on site. I think looking forward to the new skills, we need more exposure to new technology developments. And I'm talking about partnerships with suppliers, manufacturers in the construction industry. I think for me, looking at the artisans, the objective is to restore the status of being an artisan as an elite career, choice to be proud of. It seems still to be the orphan of career choices, but at the end of the day, two bricks on top of each other, nobody else than the artisans. An artisan, to become an artisan must be a lead career choice